More than 100 fires of suspicious origin have struck women's health centers, sometimes the same location more than once. The staff of one California clinic has weathered a series of arsons.
The first fire that I recall was a fire that started, we were told it was started by a cigarette. And we were told that the cigarette traveled about 20 feet down the cement walkway and around a cement guardrail and up a 10-inch cement lip and down underneath the house. And then it somehow gathered debris and started a fire. And that was our first fire, and we, were very suspicious, and I think we were more surprised that the local powers that be weren't suspicious.
Over the next 5 years, this clinic suffered 3 more arsons. After one of these, the facility had to close for 8 months, and women were forced to travel an additional 100 miles to the nearest provider.
It's very difficult to have this happen 4 times, all of them unsolved.
And you put it on speakerphone so the police heard his voice, and what kind of threats was he making at the time?
The day before we arrived to film at this Minnesota clinic, they received a series of threatening phone calls.
There's a bomb. Stop killing little babies. There's a bomb. Stop killing little babies.
He called back about 30 different times, talked to one of the nurses, told her that he had a high-powered rifle with a scope, and that he was going to kill her when she went out to get her car. The police came, and we said, put a trace on it, and they still wouldn't do anything.
Many clinics report that law enforcement agents do not respond sufficiently to threats. As a result, staff members feel they must always be on guard.
There's probably not a day that goes by that I don't think of my own safety or the safety of my family when it comes to abortion and the risks that are involved, the political fallout that you have seen taking place every day. My children are 10 and 12 years of age, and my 10-year-old daughter, when she sees my bulletproof vest, will say, well, Daddy, I hope no one kills you or wants to kill you, and that's what makes it real for me.
You gonna kill our babies? We're gonna kill a couple of babies today, Doc? I hope the Lord burns your hands off. You murderer, you filthy murderer.
In this embattled environment, fewer and fewer doctors are willing to provide abortion services. An increasing number of communities have no local providers. Many clinics, especially those in rural areas, are forced to fly doctors in from out of state. This physician travels hundreds of miles every week.
I never intended to be a full-time abortion doctor. I provided abortion services because doctors were needed. I was told that before Dr. Tiller got shot in the hand up in Wichita, Kansas, that I was an alternative target. Shortly after that, we were approached by the FBI and by the U.S. Marshal Service, and it was their decision to provide me with protection. If everybody dropped out of doing this because they were being intimidated, then there'd be no abortion providers. And perhaps I'd feel different if I was in my 40s, a young doctor, but I'm 64 years old. I'm going to be retiring soon, and I'm not going to quit what I'm doing.
Let us know if you change your mind.
This clinic is 100 miles from Pensacola, Florida, where 2 doctors and an escort were killed.
It's at 7:15.
We've really experienced some horror at the clinics in the nearby area. We've experienced some pretty scary things here with people who are opposed to women having safe and legal choice.
Individuals who continue to work in this climate are often motivated by personal memories of the back alley days.
This all began for me in the mid-60s, and I had a good friend, and she was pregnant and couldn't take care of any more children, and kept asking the doctor to help her, and he knew exactly what she meant, and he couldn't. And I got a phone call, and she'd been taken to the hospital, hemorrhaging, and she bled to death. And I went back to where she worked, and told her boss. And she said, come back here. And we went into the restroom, and there was blood everywhere. And we started cleaning it up because we didn't know if the police would be involved. We just didn't know what was going on. And I found a screwdriver behind the commode that had blood all over it. She did it to herself.
Before abortion was legal, many women died from self-induced abortions. Now, once again, hospital emergency rooms report treating women who resort to unsafe methods. Chris was a sociology major in her senior year at a state university when she discovered she was pregnant. Like many young women her age, she was not ready to have a child. She obtained an abortion at a clinic during a wave of protests. Her friends describe what they remember.
I went down with her, and we waited in the waiting room for I don't know how long. And there's people outside marching around, and then we're inside of there, and there's all sorts of like kind of weird tension inside the waiting room, and she had a really bad experience there.
I think she didn't understand why she felt so ashamed of herself.
Exactly. Totally. You know?
And I think it took her years to figure out that it had something to do with that experience, but I don't think she ever knew exactly what. I think it was that she didn't feel like she should have felt ashamed.
Chris became pregnant again after her birth control failed. She did not want to go back to a clinic because her first experience had been so disturbing.
Please consider the life that you're carrying. Don't snuff it out. You'll never forget this. This day will go down in the rest of your life. You'll never get over it.
Chris had been studying natural medicine and decided to use herbs as an abortifacient. Soon afterwards, she began to cramp.
When the cramping got really bad, she thought she was aborting. And so she didn't go to a doctor, she didn't go to see anyone. The night, the 12th of August, I got a call at 4 o'clock in the morning, and she had gone into convulsions in the bathtub. She was taken to the hospital, and she'd had cardiac arrest. And then they'd found out that she'd had an ectopic pregnancy, and that the cramping that she was feeling was that she'd been hemorrhaging probably for 2 weeks, because they said that there was dried blood in and around her fallopian tubes and in her uterus, and that's what killed her. I think that she really wanted to go to somebody. I mean, we talked about it. You know, she didn't want to be in charge and take all this responsibility. I think if there had been somebody for her to go to, that she would still be alive.
To abortion rights advocates who fought to save women's lives by changing the laws, history seems to be repeating itself.
I can remember the last time we had a march and walking down the street and thinking, you know, I thought that we wouldn't have to do this anymore, you know. And I think what happened is that when the Supreme Court decision was won, we all went, that's it, we won. And we relaxed. But at the same time, you had these groups that were organizing to repeal it. And what they did was chip away a little bit at a time over the years, because then Medicaid funding wasn't allowed for poor women. And then there was spousal consent that came up. And then you couldn't provide services to unmarried minors. without parental notification or parental consent. So there's been a lot of chipping away at the decision, which I think is unfortunate. But it means that you can never relax.